Hello, spooky bitches. Welcome to our first ever episode of the What Was That podcast. I am Jasmine, or Jazzy.
And I'm Addison, or Addi.
A little bit about us before we get into it. Addison and I actually worked together at a television production company. And that's how we met. Our desks are, I can literally peek out of my area and see her.
I'm here.
So naturally, we just have started yapping incessantly, actually.
Yeah, and we found out that both of us have a lot of trauma. And also really like being scared on top of all that trauma. So that's super fun.
Yeah, it's our exposure therapy.
Yeah, that's what you can call it. That's a word to call it. I have always listened to a lot of scary podcasts, spooky stories. I also really love Let's Read podcast and Let's Read subreddit. I'm sure a lot of people read it. There's a lot of people on it. I'm nervous. Yeah. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. It's our first episode, but I really like these types of podcasts, and I feel like Jasmine and I do a really good job at just yapping.
Yeah.
And we're also just really funny.
I think we're a hoot and a half, at least.
And just one half.
Maybe you'll rate us a hoot and two halves. Which is like two hoots.
Maybe we'll...
Right?
Oh my God.
That's the hoot math.
Two hoots. One hoot and two halves of a hoot.
If you can't tell, I'm also nervous and bad at math.
But you're really pretty.
God.
Anyway, so we just decided that we would make a little podcast where we read Reddit stories, people's real encounters with ghosts, cryptids, stalkers, weirdos. Did I say ghosts? I did say ghosts. Demons. Yep. That's another thing. Different. All things scary, spooky skeletons. We are here and happy to be here. We're very excited to finally get this rolling. We've been having it in the works for a few months now.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing this or listening, it is the first week of October. I don't know what day yet because we have not decided on when we're gonna release it.
Special little surprises.
Yes, but I know it's October, the first week, and we're really starting the scary season off right.
Yeah, we're starting strong with what, a paranormal episode today?
Yes. So for our first episode, we'll just hit the ground running with some spooky ghost stories.
Hear ghost nothing, if you will.
So, like we said 5 million times, it's our first episode. So please make sure you follow our podcast. We're going to have this on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music.
Wherever you stream it, you can probably find it if we could figure it out.
Yes, which I think with our one combined brain cell, we can. I think we're really good at it. Oh my God. We're selling it. Whips it out. First 5 minutes of the episode.
We're going to have 100 subscribers after this episode. I feel it. Please.
Our Reddit is _the pod. So if you would like to go and share your story, if you just have some comments that are nice because we are sensitive.
I will cry.
I will also cry. So please be nice. Be gentle. We are learning. And again, if you didn't hear it the first time, it's our first episode.
Number 1.
So, moving on, I am going to read a few stories that we've gotten from some Redditors, which we'll have in the description. And for those Redditors, Thank you so much for sharing your story and allowing us to share your story. Um, so, like we said, these are going to be some nice little ghost stories. I'll start us off with some kind of easygoing one. Okay, this story is called "Please Help Me Identify the Nature of This Entity I've Befriended."
Okay.
About 5 years ago, I, male 26, had somewhat of a sleep paralysis. I say somewhat, as I could stand up on my bed, hence being able to move, while also being able to clearly identify every object in my room. On the other side of the bed was a slim, tall, pale male figure whose aura almost lit the whole room. He was poking around my desk, opening and closing drawers in a frantic way as if he was looking for something specific while holding a bunch of papers in hand. I asked him, "Who are you?" in a voice that came out weak and constrained. I'm sorry. Who are you?
That was good.
At which he turned around. He had short, medium length, and neatly combed light brown hair. He wore a white shirt and a pair of corduroy brown trousers, both twice his size, and a pair of suspenders. Kind of what you would imagine a young adult would look like in World War II. Very specific. He deer-eyed me extremely anguished, almost with a desperate look. I woke up immediately after. At the time of the event, I lived in an old building that had been converted into a private university dorm by a group of Catholic priests. Originally, the complex used to be a monastery during the medieval ages. That's how old it is. I looked into its history as an attempt to go back to the identity of what I saw. Although one of the only historically significant documents I could find online was one that was reported when the building's ownership had been transferred from one religious order to another during World War II. I disclosed my findings to my parents, who are strong believers, and suggested that the spirit who visited me had to be one of the young men who tragically died in World War II, and as he was probably pleading for me for a few prayers. I went on with my life and almost forgot about this. 3 years later, I was about to buckle up on a plane seat when I distinctively felt someone kissing me on my lips. I immediately jumped back and for a brief moment, instinctively stared at the passenger next to me with suspicion. She was a half-asleep old lady who was completely unaware of me. Right after that, the face of the entity I had dreamt of years ago and whom I didn't think about since clearly formed in my mind, this time smiling with contempt. I loudly thought, "Oh, that was you," finding myself strangely relieved. Since that time, I formally had acknowledged that figure on the plane. This entity has never left me. In a good way.
Okay.
Some weeks after that, there were a few days where I felt extremely depressed. I felt so lost and hopeless that one evening I relied on the entity to give me guidance, from which I immediately felt comforted, and a series of extremely rational and wise advices formed in my mind regarding the situation I was facing, as if someone else's inner voice was speaking out loud inside my head, though I'd have to actively listen to it if I wanted to hear it, if that makes any sense. I wanted to say that at the time, and also now, I was conducting a healthy lifestyle, had no carbon monoxide intoxication, and had a pretty active social life, and I've never been diagnosed with anything. Up to this day, me and this sentient entity have grown closer, and I fully consider him as my best friend. I no longer live in that old building. I'd like to ask you what this entity might be, and if you have some sources I might research on similar experiences you'd like to share or finding answers. I've actually asked the entity's permission to do this, although he agrees. He appears to be a little bit afraid or skeptical about it, saying in the usual inner voice that I'm allowed to be curious, though I shouldn't let this curiosity of mine transform into fear or suspicion of him, ruining the beauty of the relationship they've built. To which, yes, I agree. He has completely had a positive impact on my life. Nevertheless, he won't give me a straight answer about his nature. These are some of his personal information he has disclosed to me during this year. His name's Colin. I've never met anyone with this name. When I ask him if he's dead and ever has been alive, he replies that he's actually from a different dimension of sorts, but won't specify further. He's afraid of physically manifesting again as he thinks it might scare me. He insists he met me for the first time when I was a little kid, that he swore to protect me since then. I can't recall any memory or manifestation of him in my childhood memories. I once asked him why he looked so anguished that night I had just that sort of sleep paralysis. He replied that he was extremely worried for me about a specific choice I was about to take that time around. Indeed, looking back at those years, I'm extremely grateful I didn't make a certain decision I was about to take. He was looking into some notes I had taken about it in a desk drawer. What do you think it is? Thanks for any suggestion, and feel free to ask for any clarification or more info.
I have 2 first thoughts. So I always lean towards paranormal being like fairly spooky. And my whole motto is, if I take my glasses off and I can't see the spooky thing, it's not there, so it doesn't exist, and I'm totally fine. That being said, when OP is like, I saw like a tall, pale figure in a corner, my first thought is like, nope, too spooky. And then I thought for half a second about myself and the people that I've dated recently. Tall, pale figures, not always in a corner, but I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get where you're like, let's figure this out a little more.
Let's investigate.
This brown-haired, pale figure in the corner.
With a shitty little mustache.
He sounds like a Muppet.
I can also empathize as a previous fan of really skinny, weird things in the corner.
That's my type.
But it is a little weird that the entity kissed OP on the lips to get their attention.
Right.
So that is pretty interesting. I don't know what kind of entity that would be, though. If it's followed you around your entire life.
I feel like it could lean. So if we go the way of this being something like spooky, scary, like a demonic entity that's latched on, but OP is saying that this has always been a positive influence in their life.
Exactly. And they got kissed. I mean, it can't be that bad.
A little.
Exactly. You're just like a little peck on the plane.
I don't think it's something bad.
I also don't think I've ever heard of a ghost on an aircraft, to be quite honest. So it is.
No.
So that's a new one for me.
Yeah. So yeah, I wonder if it's not necessarily a ghost.
That's what I would, because
usually they're kind of contained to an area.
Exactly. It's like a specific thing. I mean, you always hear about like ghosts in haunted houses or lakes or whatnot, but I've never heard of a ghost or like spirit haunting a person to where it just follows them around without being some sort of demonic entity.
Right. It could lean, if like OP believes in it, it could lean towards more of like a guardian angel type.
Yeah.
And it's manifesting in a way that OP is actually accepting of it and willing to hear.
Yeah, it is very interesting that it's a World War II veteran.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, like, maybe about OP's family history.
Yeah, I don't see anything about that in here, but OP did talk to, OP's a man? Yeah. He did talk to his parents about this situation, and he said that his parents are believers and said that it was some sort of ghostly entity.
Right.
So I feel like if they knew anything about it, they might...
they would have mentioned it.
Might have mentioned it. So I don't know. That's a very interesting take on a ghost.
Yeah.
I don't know. If anybody does know...
Yeah, any thoughts on what it could be? 'Cause yeah, I just, based on it being on the plane and following this person around for years.
Yeah.
Which ghosts might do that, and I just don't. I mean,
Oh my God,
I
somebody
only know so much
commented
about
a
ghosts.
very, very long comment that I was going to read. I'm not going. Nope. Somebody commented, I've heard of people having these entities that actually fall in love with them, and then when they get a boyfriend or significant other, they get jealous and badness ensues. Also, it seems like you don't trust this spirit. If that's the case, say in Jesus' name, I demand demons away from the presence. And when he's around, or say that when he's around, and see what happens. If he's evil, you should know then. There are guardian spirits out there, but I think you may be getting played by a dark spirit. So say your prayers and stay close to God. My gut says he's demonic. If he was a guardian angel, he would appear to you when you were in danger. It wouldn't just come to hang out. You know this is wrong, or you wouldn't have written about it. Get this entity out of your life as quick as you can. So on. So yeah, there's quite a bit of very, very long comments on here. A lot of people are saying guardian angel.
Okay.
So it looks like you have some traction
Yeah.
with that.
See,
But there are a lot of people that are saying that's what you call a lying spirit.
yeah, that's what I would worry about. Because you wouldn't know either way. And my worry with like saying that mantra, I worry two ways. One, that it's true and that makes things like worse and scary, or that it's not true and you hurt your ghost friend's feelings.
Yeah, because if it has been a really nice spirit to you, you don't really want to. I shouldn't.
Like, can you whisper it? Just in the corner.
I feel like it would be really disrespected if you tried to be like, in Jesus' name, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah, either way, disrespectful.
Yeah, but it is super weird that a World War II ghost has come to guide you. But
so I know this isn't entirely the same thing, but it does make me think about one of my friends' mom has they've moved into multiple houses, and the mom will see like a little girl or something, and she has 3 daughters, so she's like, oh yeah, a little girl spirit, like I'll talk to you, and she's religious. Her pastor said that's her inviting something in, and usually it's not a little girl, it's something much more malicious.
I have heard that the demonic spirits will take form as something really what's the word?
It's like something like you would consider innocent.
Thank you, innocent. Yeah. It takes form as something innocent, something that you trust,
right?
So it can weasel its way in. That's how Annabelle came to be, because she became she inhabited a doll, and so most people don't think immediately. Well, they do now, obviously.
But at the time.
But at the time, people didn't consider. I mean, dolls were everywhere. Every girl had a doll, especially originally was a Raggedy Ann doll, and those were highly sought after in their time.
I had a Raggedy Ann doll, and this was after the fact.
Yeah, it just goes to show that they be doing whatever it takes to get into your house.
Yeah. Eventually what ended up happening is they had their pastor come out to check things out and exorcise it, and he's like, nope, we're calling the Catholics. The Catholics came out, and then they came out once a month and did the 4 corners of the property, because whatever she invited in was so big and bad and scary that they're like, we got to keep doing this, actually. Monthly service fee.
For a monthly cleaning service.
Yeah.
You just have a pastor come over and bless your house once a month. It's a subscription.
Yeah. I learned this after I would dog sit for her. I was like, so you had me in a haunted house by myself.
But did you die?
No. Maybe emotionally.
I feel like a lot of things killed you before that.
That's true. You're so right.
All right. You ready to move on?
Yeah, let's get into the next one.
Story number 2. This one is called What's Going On in My New Apartment is Freaking Me Out. I'm a person of science. I've never believed in anything paranormal, but right now I'm having some experiences I just can't explain. My girlfriend and I recently bought an apartment. It's small and old, but it's close to our jobs and was surprisingly cheap. We figured it was worth it. But after we moved in, we found a problem we never had before. Our cat started acting out. We kept finding things knocked over in the living room and heard thudding sounds at night. Our cat is very calm and has never behaved like this before. At first, I thought it was just the new apartment. Maybe she needed time to adjust to the smaller space. I hope she calmed down eventually. Then one evening, my girlfriend and I were in bed watching a movie on her laptop when we heard the sound of glass shattering in the living room. I got up to check and saw a flower vase smashed on the floor. Looks like Mintu, our cat, got a little too wild, I said out loud. But my girlfriend, standing at the doorway with the cat in her arms, said, "No, she didn't." Mintu had been in the bedroom with us the entire time. Since then, strange stuff hasn't stopped. Weird noises keep coming from the living room when no one is there, and we keep finding things knocked over even when we know the cat hasn't been around. I've tried not to make a big deal out of it. Maybe a mouse is hiding somewhere, or maybe it's the wind sneaking into the apartment, or maybe the building is slightly tilted in a way that's causing things to move. Even when we found a freaking chair knocked over, I tried to brush it off. Sure, it's hard to imagine a cat or mouse could do that, but who knows? My girlfriend took Mintu and went to her parents' place for a few days, so I was alone in the apartment. While making breakfast in the kitchen, I heard a loud thud from the fridge. It sounded like someone punched it hard. I thought it might be a malfunction, but I can't find any explanation that makes sense. Later the same day, one of the weirdest things so far happened. We always keep a candle on the living room table, but when I got home from work, it wasn't there. Instead, I found it broken in two on the other side of the room. It looked like someone had slapped it across the room. I know for a fact it was on the table when I left that morning, and no one had been in the apartment all day. I get that none of these things sound like a big deal on their own, but together it's starting to creep me out. Has anyone else had experiences like this?
That is wild. And I'm gonna go, that's definitely a ghost. Because, like, I imagine if OP, they're saying this happened only in this apartment, right?
Yeah, they like moved
before.
in and it just started.
Yeah, because I feel like if a small thing falls off a shelf, especially depending on where you live, if you're in California, you can be like, oh, it must have been a little earthquake that I didn't really feel, but it was enough. But it sounds like with things moving like across the room, like the candle, a lot more would be moved around.
Yeah.
If it was something like that.
Sorry,
I don't think I have any other... I don't have any other scientific explanations for why something would move that far.
Yeah.
Definitely not the cat unless they're just smacking the shit out of that. But there's other things that aren't explained.
Yeah, I do agree. It's hard because it's like one of those things doesn't sound like a big deal, but then it's kind of tacked onto others. But it's still, we have a thud in the fridge, a vase, and a candle. But that does make me think of what I've been dealing with.
Right.
Because they just moved in. When did they move in? I'm so sorry, OP. I know that they just recently bought an apartment. Mm-hmm. So, by the way, they're stuck with it. So if it is a ghost, you're screwed.
Hopefully it's nice.
But it does make me think about what's been going on here. So I recently moved into a new townhome back in June, and It's not very old. I mean, it was built in 2005, I think. But there have just been weird feelings since I've moved in. It definitely, I mean, it just has that feeling of like someone else is there, but not in an overpowering way. It's just, like when you're sitting watching TV and you're like, I feel like somebody's looking at me, but no one's looking at you.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And then the other day, it was a week or so ago, I was sweeping my kitchen, and I had walked into my living room for something, which is right next to my kitchen. And I heard this like clank, and one of my air vents that like pushes the air conditioning through was up and like a foot away on the ground, face up, still face up. Like it hadn't been like tipped over and knocked over. It was like somebody picked it up, moved it, and put it on the ground, like a foot away.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm going ghost.
And so it was like that one thing, and it's very unlikely that one of my pets did that because it's a vent moving and just being. Right. I feel like that's unlikely. Could it happen? I don't know. I guess anything could happen. I don't know. But then shortly after, I was sitting on my stairs, as one does.
In your house, yeah.
Yeah, I just like to sit on my stairs. I was on the phone with my father, and I felt something come up against my back and like touch me, like against my back, like somebody came up and like put their hand against my back.
Yeah.
And I turned around because I was like, maybe it's one of my cats, and they just like pressed their body against me. Because I had a shirt on, so there's not really a whole way to tell if it's fur or a hand. It was just a warm pressure. And I turn around, and my cats aren't there. And I look to my right, and they're on the other side of the living room. And my dog is at my feet. So there was nothing behind me.
Right.
So that was another weird thing. And then when I was setting up for the podcast tonight, it felt like somebody came up and touched my leg.
A little pat of support of, you're going to do
so
good.
That's how I feel like it was, too, with the sitting on the stairs, as I was on the phone with my father.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was a little pat of support. Like, hey, I'm here for you while you're doing this.
Well, let me know how this develops. I'm very... Yeah.
So I've cleansed a few times. But
since
I'm also...
then?
Not since then. I do need to. But I've cleansed multiple times since moving in. So I don't know. If there is something there, it seems like we can just coexist. It seems like we're just vibing. So as long as it's like a spider, as long as it's not in my...
as long as I don't see it, or...
As long as it's not trying to, like, mess with me or crawl on me, we'll be fine. I'm not going to exercise you. But the second you start invading my space, man, we're going to have a problem.
Out of here.
I'm not religious, but I will call a Catholic priest.
I know a guy. My friend knows a guy.
He knows a guy.
I knows a guy, yeah.
He knows a guy. Let's go. Yeah. Anyway, you have anything else to say on that?
I don't think I've ever, like, felt anything in person.
Yeah.
But my dreams are wild.
Yeah, same.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah. That's why I have medication for.
I need to get on that.
It doesn't help. It just makes you sleep.
Raw dogging life.
It's so hard out here, man.
I cry all the
day
time.
is a nightmare. The night is a nightmare. When can I escape it? I'm tired of living in this husk. Anyway, you ready to move on?
On to the next one.
All right. Short one. Story number 3. I think it's something in my house. Me and my mom were talking. I was sitting in the living room and she was in the kitchen. We were talking about my nephew and I said, "Aw, my baby." I heard a woman voice. It sounded like it was trying to mimic my mom's voice. And it said, "Aw." But as she said, "Aw," it went on and it sounded kind of gurgled. Now I'm high as fuck. I thought it was me not hearing right. My mom said, "Did you hear that?" I was like, "Yeah, I thought it was you." She said she didn't open her mouth after I said, "Aw, my baby." Whatever that thing was responded right on cue. I've been seeing stuff out of the corner of my eye for the past month. I have floaters, so I always tell myself it's just that. I'm kind of freaked out since we both clearly heard this voice. Should I do a cleansing?
1,000%. Okay, so I'm sorry to my friend whose story that I keep bringing up, but one of the weird things that happened after, like, their mom invited whatever that was in was it would mimic voices. So my friend would hear her mom at a different part of the house calling her name super frantically, so she would go run and see who it was, and each family member heard a different person calling their name. So it was learning to do multiple voices. Which is very scary. And then what ended up making them call people, I'm going to sit on my hands. What ended up making them call people, the priests, was they set up a
Not just
camera.
the people, the priests.
Yeah, not just like Joe down the block. Father Joe down the block. They set up the camera in the living room, and the youngest is known to sleepwalk. And as she was sleepwalking, they saw a shadow behind her, and they're like, oh, what? So then they called a priest, who then called in the Catholic priests or the pastor,
so
the priest,
goes.
and then you heard the rest at the beginning of this podcast. So, sorry, you know who you are that I'm telling your story. But
at least you're not.
It applies.
It does apply. Did you ever, maybe this is just a thing that I experienced, but did you ever experience that as a kid?
Like hearing name, like someone calling, yes.
Yeah, because my parents worked a lot, both of my parents. So whether I lived with my mom or lived with my dad, they were gone quite a bit. And I would always think that I would hear them call my name and say that they were home. Because they would always walk in and be like, Addison, Taylor, we're home. Or whatever they, but there were multiple times I remember as a kid hearing that and then going into the living room or going by the front door and no one being home. And that always like freaked me out even as a kid. And then growing up and learning what mimics are, it's terrified me even more because I was just a kid.
Right.
But the good thing is that my mom instilled a big fear of strangers into my life.
That's very good.
So if I ever heard knocking on the door or knocking on the window, which I have heard before, I was like, I'm going back to my room.
That is not my business.
That's not my business. Exactly. You know what? Let's leave. I'm out of there, dude. And even as a child, that's like how I was. And even now, that's still how I would be if I heard that. That's like a big thing in Appalachia too.
It is.
You'll hear somebody call your name, like your mom or your sister or your partner out in the woods, and they'll call your name and lure you out there. You have
to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't turn back, don't listen, like get out of there. This made me think of, so kind of like you said, as a kid, like being in the house, it was usually me and my brother, but when he moved with my dad, it was me alone. So I would hear like someone calling me to do something, but no one was home. But I think the weirder instances of that happening, I was maybe 13 or 14 the first time, and then 18 the second time. I heard a voice, like, completely unexplained, because no one was home. And the first time it said, always, which was weird. And then years later, when I was older, I heard the same voice say, you're mine, which I have, like, really spooky nightmares about, like, my soul being, like, sucked into the depths of hell. So then I was, like, hearing that, and I was like, no, thank you. Can we break up? Like, I don't want to be here.
I think this has become a toxic relationship. I haven't heard from you in nearly 10 years. I don't know why you're back and telling me that I'm yours.
Yeah. First of all, I don't even know your name. So how can we
really
be together?
I don't even know what you look like.
Right.
That's toxic behavior, to be honest. That's really, really narcissistic of that demon.
Super rude.
So I'm really sorry. But
yeah, no, I've never like heard that voice again.
That's really
but
crazy.
I just thought about that. It's the mushroom powder that I'm taking. It's helping my brain come back together, we'll say. Like, not like shrooms, but like lion's mane mushroom powder.
Yeah, no, I got that after you yeah.
Yeah, I saw your face and I was like, ah.
Yeah, I also have been having a lot of dreams about getting dragged into hell.
Oh.
But it's been accompanied by somebody traumatizing in my life doing it every time. Almost every night for the last like 2 weeks.
That's awful.
Yeah. Some of the comments on here are pretty much just try a cleansing. Someone else said, I would pass it off for now and not think too much about it. Don't let it ruin your high. Lots of people saying cleansing. That's pretty much...
I feel like a cleansing wouldn't hurt.
It definitely would not. Well...
Maybe. I take that back instantly. It could hurt.
If it's just a mimic, I feel like it probably wouldn't hurt to do. So, all right, moving on.
To the next one.
All right, this is our last story of our first episode.
The first of the last.
The first and the last.
Uh-huh.
No, just kidding. Story 4. The lady who watched over me while I slept as a child and the shadow figures that scared me after she left. I was between 3 and 5 years old, so it was around 1989 to 1991. My room was on the complete opposite end of the house from my parents' bedroom. I'd wake up in the middle of the night on a regular basis, scared. When I'd wake up, I remember seeing this woman standing at the end of my bed. I could see through her, but she also put off a glow. It was a warm, loving, welcoming, and peaceful glow. She always was wearing a blue tunic and a white headdress. She was always looking down, holding and happily comforting a baby wrapped in a blanket. After a few seconds of having my eyes open, she'd notice that I was awake and would act surprised like I wasn't supposed to see her, and then she'd immediately disappear. I've never felt threatened by her at all. I remember the first time I saw her, I didn't know what to think, and I pulled my sheets over my head before she disappeared. Period. She really did give off an aura that was comforting, welcoming, loving, peaceful, and happy. The glow coming off her felt like that, like I knew I was completely safe while sleeping. This happened quite a few times, to the point I'd smile when I saw her waking up, and she'd look back at me with a smile that was comforting, yet at the same time also conveyed something like you aren't supposed to actually see me, while still intentionally letting me see her for a few seconds before fading away. She felt like a very familiar motherly figure, but it wasn't my mom. I was always scared right after she'd disappear because the safe feeling would disappear as well, and I'd want to run to my parents' bedroom. I could see my parents' bedroom from the doorway of my room, but you'd had to walk through the dining room and living room to get to it. There were always these strange shadow figures, dozens of them, walking around in the dining room, kitchen, and living room. I remember being so scared of them, but I never actually drew their attention while I stood there watching them from my bedroom doorway, and they never really noticed me or walked towards me. It seemed like they were in a hurry, walking with busy intent but never actually going anywhere. I was always scared of them, even more scared that I'd draw their attention, but I wanted the comfort of my parents. I was too scared to run through the shadow people that were walking around, so I'd scream for my parents from my bedroom doorway. The instant I'd scream, the shadow people would stop walking, then all of them would look at me with an angry and frustrated aura, but never actually took a step towards me. They'd just disappear about the time I'd heard either of my parents' voices as my mom or dad walked towards me. One of the last times I saw the lady at the end of my bed in the shadow people, I wanted to get to my parents' room where they were, but instead of calling out for them, I just closed my eyes and held out my hands to feel my way across the dining room and living room to my parents' bedroom. I actually made it there on my own, even with my eyes closed. I could feel them, there before they started to disappear, but I could also feel as they were fading away, and they were angry because I wasn't scared of them anymore. I stopped seeing them shortly after that, which was also around the time I started feeling more comfortable staying in my own bed all night by myself without needing to have my parents close by. But it's one of the most real and vivid memories I can remember from when I was that age. I'm 38 now, and I still remember exactly what that lady looked like and felt like in the shadow people. This wasn't even an old house or anything you'd really associate with a stereotypical haunted place. It was actually a relatively new double-wide trailer that my mom and dad had put there a few years before I was born. They bought the trailer brand new directly from the manufacturer. I feel like what I saw and felt had to be real, because a 3 to 5-year-old wouldn't be able to imagine that physical feeling from her aura that was so welcoming, understanding, comforting, loving, and peaceful that the lady at the end of my bed gave off as she glowed. It was a distinct feeling that a 3 to 5-year-old wouldn't have been able to just randomly imagine, a feeling I still remember somehow. I never saw anything like that again in this place or any other place I've lived.
Okay. So the way they describe the positive entity, it's giving, honestly, Virgin Mary, the way they're talking about it, wrapped in a blue, because that's usually how she's depicted, wrapped in blue,
Holding a baby.
So that's really interesting. And then the way they're talking about, as a kid, like when you're scared of the dark and monsters in your closet, and as they got comfortable in their own room, essentially those monsters started to fade. Follow me down this rabbit hole. What if kids are more susceptible to seeing things? So what if the monsters in the closet are them actually seeing like different entities and ghosts and spirits?
And then they grow out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I 100% believe you that. I agree with you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. That's like, a lot of like scary movies kind of imply that too. What is that? Oh my God, there is a movie where the kids can see something and then they like hit an age and it turns off. I don't know. I'll figure it out after this and maybe we'll pin it for next time.
Here's what it is.
Add in what the actual movie is because I know that it exists.
Do you remember who's in it?
No. It's a concept. I have a concept. I'm not the president yet. I don't have the plan. I have concepts.
Once Addie's president, we will find out what it is.
What the movie is. Because right now it's just a concept.
Vote for Addie.
But, yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's also, it's giving Insidious. It's giving a sleep at night as a child seeing shadow people. Mm-hmm. But again, I agree with you wholeheartedly on the kids can see stuff and then they grow out of it. So I do wonder what these shadow people that OP was seeing.
Right.
But then it also begs the question of when you're 3 to 5 years old, your brain is really malleable, and the human memory is pretty impeccable with taking one thing and kind of emphasizing it. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if it was like one or two instances, and then it just kind of like blew up from there.
Yeah.
But I do think it's really interesting that OP saw this woman dressed in blue holding a baby, because it is very much Virgin Mary. And so it's like maybe there was some sort of protection there. Maybe. That's what I'm seeing a lot of these comments are saying too, is it very much looked like the Virgin Mary. There's a good chance that it was somebody protecting you. Virgin Mary, Virgin Mary, Virgin Mary. So, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah,
As a kid, I commend you for being able to scream for your parents, because I would be so scared.
Way too scared. I would
to
have
make a single noise
under my
the
covers.
blankets, completely not.
Right. Yep. Not making a sound.
Nope. No. Absolutely not. That's literally how I used to sleep when I was a kid. And
would you do a little air hole so you don't suffocate?
Yeah, all the time. You like tuck your head in like around your eyes and just kind of like put your nose in your mouth out.
Yeah, and you
like,
kind of. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because that's also how I used to sleep.
And it's also like, it's the thing of, if you can't see it, it's not
It can't
there.
see you.
Yeah, so if my eyes are covered while I'm sleeping, nothing's there.
Right.
I cheat the system.
Exactly.
We cheat the system. That's how we get rich, ladies and gentlemen. That's the only way you can win these days.
That's how you get ahead of the game. What do you think I am, Jeff Bezos? No, I'm not.
You gotta
First of all,
cover your head while you're sleeping. Otherwise, all the ghosts, they can get into your brain through your eyeballs.
Shut those. It is my entire concept if I'm ever in a haunted house. I wear contacts. I cannot see. But yeah, my whole thought is just pop those babies out.
I was about to say, do you just like take them out?
Yeah, if I don't see whatever it's trying, like, oh, you're floating a bowl in the corner. I didn't notice it because I can't see. So eventually you're going to get bored and move on and leave me alone.
That's so true. When I went to the haunted house on Saturday, there was this room. So they did like a pass where they film you if you wear this lanyard.
Mm-hmm.
So Quinn and I wore these lanyards, and they like filmed us through the whole haunted house. And then we got to see little previews of it. You still have to pay like $35 to buy these videos of you walking through a haunted house. So we like looked at the videos, but there was one part of the haunted house that we walked through. There was like a giant library. Like their room was this super tall library with like shelves and shelves of books, and it was like vines everywhere, and it was like supposed to be spooky, but I was like, wow, I would love this in my house.
Yeah.
So we were walking through, and the whole time I like mouth agape was like like walking around, like, so I was appreciating every little detail, and this lady jumped out to scare me, and I looked at her and I was like, wow. And it was on video. We like went to the end, and we were like in the gift shop looking through our videos, and I was like, what's that one? And we looked at it, and it was just me walking through mouth agape, and then you see the lady jump out, and I go, wow.
What a scare. What a fright. Wow.
So I like walking through haunted houses because I get to see stuff like that. Yeah. It's just the set. People put a lot of time into the set, especially when it's a really high quality production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always get caught up in the production value of especially a haunted house, or even like movies. And I feel like when I didn't do that, I would get more scared by them. But now I'm like, that was such a good acting choice on your part. I'm so proud of you.
Exactly. Or when there's a really cool shot and you're like, wow, I really love that they, like, how they move the camera around. I really love the coloring of this. Shout out, DC. You know.
Number 2 subscriber. Thank you.
But it's a lot easier to digest horror content when you can appreciate the art that's going into it, which I think is why I've learned to love, not even learned, but have like navigated towards horror so much later in my teens and moving into my adulthood, is that I just can appreciate how much more effort I feel like it takes to create horror content or to create something actually scary, because you can pop out Marvel movies, you can pop out superhero movies, you can pop out rom-coms and follow the same thing. But I think making a real good horror movie or a really good horror podcast is about putting thought into it and actually trying to make it different.
Right. Yeah.
So
there's a lot of nuance that goes into creating, especially a good horror movie or a horror podcast. Because you're right. If you have that formula, people get very much used to it and they know what to expect, and the jump scares aren't scary anymore. So I always love when I can see the building of anticipation through the music or the visuals, or they like show you something that historically, yeah, that would have been the spot where it scared you, but they know that.
Yeah.
So it's being creative and having a good base knowledge of the genre.
Yeah.
So you can break the rules effectively.
Yeah. That's what I think there's a term for it. It's like the black cat something. Because there's like a formula that they follow for horror movies, and that shot that you were talking about, the anticipation where you think that a scare should take place, but it's a black cat that just runs by.
That makes sense. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Big brain. Which I have a black cat, in case anybody wanted to know.
She's got a black cat. Big brain.
Yeah. I know about black cats. I got one.
I got one. What are you talking about?
I don't know what to say right now. I don't know
So
if we
anyway.
can leave that. I'm just going to fidget with my mic for a second.
That'll be premium content. No, talk about my black cat for free.
Subscribe to our Patreon if you want to hear about Jasmine's black cat.
Let me know if you want an OnlyFans. Just totally. I mean, yeah.
I mean, just side-eyeing the camera. I can't stop messing with my mic now. Anyway, well, that's all the stories that we have for this episode, for our first episode.
I feel like that was a pretty decent first episode.
I think so. I promise you, if that was bad, if you're listening to it, I promise you it'll get better. We're really nervous.
We're trying.
We're trying our
We'll
hardest.
figure it out.
We are figuring it out. We are just two girls, and we don't have a cup.
No, the candle. That's different.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just two girls and we're trying our best. So please be nice.
Please be nice. If you say anything mean,
I will cry.
But really, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for supporting us for our first episode. This really is exciting for us, and we're really excited to start putting episodes out every week. So stay tuned for next week, where we'll do a creepy stalker show.
Yeah.
And we'll be putting them out every single week, little spine tingling sets of stories. And we'll do it again and again and again until you hear it in your nightmares every single night.
And then you can make a podcast about hearing us in your nightmares.
Please make sure you follow our podcast on whatever streaming service you use, along with our YouTube and our TikTok. Also, go ahead and follow our Reddit page and add any stories if you would like. You can post them on our subreddit page or email us at whatwasthat.thepod at gmail.com. And yeah, we would love to hear what you have to say, and if you have any scary stories. And thank you, big thank you to all of the Redditors today for letting us use your stories. We greatly appreciate you. And yeah, until next time. Wait, what was that?